Aloha my kako and welcome back to another book review. I am Mama Kitty and today we are reviewing The Co-op by Tarah DeWitt. According to her bio, DeWitt started writing for the same reason a lot of us started writing. She ran out of things to read and was then forced to write stories only she could tell. She has authored several unconventional romance novels such as Savor It, Funny Feelings, and of course The Co-op. The Goodreads synopsis for The Co-op is as follows. They say love and construction don't mix. By that logic, hate and construction may as well be condemned. Lorraine Levine and Deacon Leeds had one short and contentious summer fling when they were teens, certainly nothing to build a foundation on. But a decade later, when their grandmothers have left them with shared ownership of their dilapidated Santa Cruz building, they're thrust back together and have to figure out how to brace up the pieces. Lorraine has the money, but to access her trust she has to be married. Deacon has the construction experience, but lacks the funds. A deal is struck. Marry for however long it takes to fix up the property, collect a profit, and cut ties. Thrust into a home without walls, they quickly learn that it's easy to hide behind emotional ones, even in a marriage. But with all the exposure and pitfalls that come from living with the opposite sex, and none of the perks, they'll also have to learn what it means to truly cooperate as a team. The Co-op is a steamy story about restoration and renovation, and uncovering all the things that build character within ourselves. It's about the never-ending construction project that partnership is, and finding enjoyment at any stage. So getting into the book, one of the first things that really dragged me into it and really, got me wanting to read it was that it's a contracted marriage, right? Like it said in the synopsis, and a frenemies to lovers, which it sort of alludes to in the synopsis as well. It makes a very delicious dynamic where the characters have to cohabitate while also pretending to be totally in love with each other out in public. Not that pretending was particularly hard because it was very clear from the beginning of the story that they are literally head over heels for each other. Lorraine was feisty and she was so fiery and so passionate and so alive that I just completely fell in love with her. I adored her while also knowing that she was probably one of the most unlikable lady leads I've ever read. And while I'm not going to get into why she's unlikable because I think you should experience that for yourself, I can say that I felt like it was sort of part of her charm. I enjoyed how mean she was, but I know that if that were happening to me in real life, I would have a hard time being friends with her if she was as mean to me as she was to Deacon on occasions. I adored how petty she was. It was just an aspirational level of petty, and it was a level that most lady leads in romance genres don't really get the opportunity to do. I also greatly enjoyed the fact that she was obsessed with Deacon Leeds, even though she very valiantly tried to deny it throughout a good half of the book. Not that Deacon was any better. As I have said before, one of my favorite things in romance novels is when the male protagonist is just absolutely freaking obsessed with their leading lady. He was such a teddy bear, and it was a kind of amusing to watch him have to deal with Lorraine, but at the same time suffer. Not that I enjoyed his suffering, but it was an interesting duality of her meanness turning him on while also really kind of getting ego punched every now and then throughout the novel, and it was just fun to read. The frustrating part of this book, while also being a 10 out of 10, was the slow burn. It takes these two characters to a really long time to realize that they're irrevocably in love with each other. What I liked about this though is that it was also frustrating for the characters. They were so down bad for each other, and it really makes just for some really good smut. The smut in this novel was just graphic enough to make me blush while also being simple enough to leave lots to the imagination. Let's just say, for the sake of simplicity, it was hot AF. I really, really enjoyed just how desperate they were for each other and how that desperation really was highlighted in those scenes. My favorite thing about the book, though, my absolute favorite thing, was that there was an epilogue that was 10 years later. I so deeply appreciate when authors give us stuff like that. It really just, in my very humble opinion, makes the whole book better. It makes it a little bit easier to transition from the fictional world into reality. It makes it easier to let go, if you will. Now, with all the niceties out of the way, let's talk about what I wasn't particularly fond of. So, as mentioned before, Lorraine is mean and petty and fiery and feisty, and it's part of her charm while also being a part of her very significant trauma. But these attributes were part of what made Lorraine Lorraine. You know what I mean? This is about to be a smidge kind spoilery, but by the end of the book, Lorraine, it felt like love had cured her. She kind of stopped being mean and sort of very suddenly had control over her emotions and how she reacted to Deacon. Now, I understand that sometimes relationships can be really healing, right? That they can allows a space for you to be able to heal and reflect without having to be alone. But at a certain point, it just felt like her whole personality disappeared. And all that was left was the love and desperation and obsession with her husband. It just wasn't particularly realistic. And before you say anything, I know that part of the whole point of romance is that it's not necessarily realistic, but at a certain point it really made me kind of actually dislike her character a little bit. Now, as a lot of romances tend to do, this story switched back and forth between Lorin and Deacon, but it also switches timelines, right? So we have the present timeline with Deacon and Lorin working on the house, and then we have a past timeline where the initial iteration of their relationship is sort of unfolding, and we start to see where some of the miscommunications happened back when they were teens. And I liked all of those things. It was more that when they first switch, it was a little confusing for me to realize that we were in a past iteration of the story. And I realized after my confusion that the author does provide a little before, right under the chapter title or whatever. But I think maybe it was just a little small as far as what the reader's paying attention to. But maybe that's just me. Overall, I really liked this book, and while it was different from what I expected, I really liked the subversions of the genre that the author was able to do with Lorin being mean like that. Because I feel like a lot of the time, our leading ladies in romances, especially once you get into darker romances, tend to be a little bit damsel in distressy. And while Lorin is not a damsel in distress, considering how traumatized she is, but just she's not a doormat. And I'm not trying to say that all leading ladies in romance stories are doormats, but you know what I mean? Like that, yeah. With that in mind, I'm giving the co-op 4 out of 5 stars. The dissolution of Loren's personality was really quite a bummer, but everything else in the story was good enough to sort of make up for that. I would recommend this book to anybody that likes romance, contract marriages, and frenemies to lover tropes. I thought it was really fun to read, and I really enjoyed watching Lorin and Deacon dance around each other until they figured out that they loved each other. The next book we're reviewing is Coram House by Bailey Sebold. This will be another ARC, which for those who are unaware means advanced reader copy, and that basically means that I get a free, sometimes unedited copy of the book in exchange for a honest review. I'm pretty excited about it, though it's not in my preferred genre. It's a mystery thriller based on a true story. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification so you know when that video comes out. Mahalo nui loa for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye!